Hi, everyone. This is Jack Allwell with another money episode. Today we have Gary Micu Jr. from Micu Growth. Gary, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be on.
Before we get into money mindset, growth mindset, I like to ask everyone, what was your relationship like with money growing up?
Yeah, absolutely. So growing up, we had access to money, right? We had everything we needed. We never went without. I would say very blue collar, very middle class. And through that, we're really cued in, right? Especially as a kid, money was this thing that mom and dad handled, and nobody really talked about money. It wasn't until getting a little older that started kind of cueing into some of the things, how does a loan work? When, what to save, not just to save, right? Because as a kid, it was always taught, hey, you get money, put it in your savings account. That's where it needs to go. So from that, like I said, we never went without. We certainly had nice things. We would take family trips. If we wanted, a toy at Christmas or things like that, they would come around. But it was oftentimes the not now, or well, you've got to save for it, or you've got to make this happen in some way versus being available. And again, without that underlying kind of real education of what is money. So then getting a little older, thinking about starting my own family, that's when I was able to kind of cue into how does this thing with money really work? Right? What does it actually look like? And then through that, I realized that while my family was saving heavy, they also were investing, but they just didn't tell us about that. So it was this like awareness that opened up, and then it made sense why we never had gone without, because it wasn't just saved, it was actually invested too.
Awesome. So looking back at your childhood and what you learned along the way, what things are you now implementing with your kids? And maybe what are some tweaks you're also making?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. So, my daughter is 20 months old. So we are in right now kind of we're accumulating, right? So to use our 10X framework, we have to earn it, we have to keep it, and then we look to multiply it. So right now, as she gets, little gifts or things of that nature, we're in that keep it stage. So we're doing a lot of saving with her. And by a lot, I mean all of it's going into her little savings. There's nothing really to spend it on. But starting to have those conversations about was just talking to my dad the other day. What's her college going to look like? Getting that set up. Insurance policies, right? And I know a lot of people don't like to think about insurance, especially with their children, but it's health insurance time. And so that's a top priority. And then as well as other forms of insurance, up to and including life, making sure that those policies exist. And particularly with her going with a whole life policy. So she'll have this asset now that really will become her own once she's old enough to make those sorts of real financial decisions.
Awesome. I'm a big proponent of whole life, so I have a couple of policies myself, and
I
I
love
think
it,
that
especially for
that
the little ones, because it's such a great time to put that in place for them.
mhm. So you touched on the 10X framework. Can you give us
Yeah,
a little bit of background on that?
absolutely. So just a little background on why I draw from the 10X framework. And of course, I've got the 10X certified up above me here. I am a 10X certified coach. I'm a Grant Cardone licensee. And what that in effect means is I've purchased the rights to use and distribute Grant's material. So Grant Cardone, for those who don't know him, has 30 plus years of business experience. Most well known at the moment, I would say, for his real estate portfolio, up over 5.5 billion of assets. They're actually starting a new fund soon for one of the towers in Chicago, right on the Mag Mile. So massive level investments, but it all started with sales. Started in car dealerships and then grew into sales training and consulting and other forms from there. So what I do then is I help bring people into that fold of these frameworks are proven and tested, not just to make Grant a billionaire, but for the thousands of other business owners who benefit every day from employing these same strategies. So specifically on the money side, whether it is wealth, building wealth, investing, those sorts of things, we follow frameworks, and it allows us the flexibility to adapt it to any circumstance, but also the rigidity in knowing that we do have a roadmap to see have we gone astray. So that's where at the very base, it's we've got to earn income, then we've got to keep it, then we've got to multiply it. In the keeping, it means we're not spending it on junk, on
Mhm.
crap, right? We're not just blowing it on things. But we're also not saving it indefinitely, because the multiply comes in then with, we have to have an intentionality to invest it, to look to grow it. And as we know, saving rates are getting better, but they're definitely not what they once were. And even then, there's so many other channels or modes to increase your income, especially passive. And now you're not no longer trading time for money, right? So that's the end goal, of course, I think, at the high stage of really for anyone's plan.
Mm-hmm. So touching on the earning segment, someone comes to you, Gary, I want to get good at sales. I see what Grant's doing. Like, what are some of the first steps I should be taking?
Absolutely. So first step is one, that awareness that you do want to get better. You've got to be willing to improve. And I know that now we're into the mindset realm right off the bat, and everybody's like, oh, of course, right? But it really is true. It's that key foundation. If you don't want it, if you don't see the purpose, then the work that it's required to obtain that level of skill, to really create massive levels of success, you won't do it. You just won't, because things get hard. It's 10 times harder than you think it's going to be. And then you hit a stage and you're like, all right, I've got it. And the next thing you know, you look ahead and you're like, but I want to do more again. And again, now we're back on that track of it's hard. So why to keep pushing? We've really got to have that clear purpose. And then from that, then that's our starting point as far as the training materials and the segments to actually now get you that knowledge you need. Number one thing I can say is Cardone University. It's our online training platform. It'd take you about 2 years to go through it if you did about a half hour to 45 minutes every single day. So it's a huge volume of material. And then that's where someone like myself comes in and can really then pinpoint, what is it that you need, Jack? Right. So I know what Gary needs. I know what maybe Samantha needs, but what does Jack need? So through those conversations, I'm able to dial you in. And that's the self-study. If you want to take it a step above, now we've got, maybe group mentoring. It's a great point where you're not all the way in on one-on-one, but you've got that additional support. And now you're building a network of like-minded individuals to help you along that journey. Again, if you're not ready for that commitment to one-on-one. And one-on-one is really where my specialization lies.
Can you talk a little bit more about the Cardone University and what topics are
Absolutely.
covered?
Yeah, absolutely. So inside of Cardone University, there are, depending on the version you get, either 500 plus or 800 plus segments. And that's something where it's based on your use case, which direction to go there. And there's actually a third that's specifically for auto dealers. So if you're listening and you're interested in automotive in particular, there's a whole platform, all the terminology, the verbiage is set up specifically for that industry. But the broader Cardone U is set up then to really work across the board, whether you're in financial investments where you're highly, highly regulated on what you can and can't do, or you're a startup and maybe you don't know what you need to do yet. You're still learning that. So it runs through primarily from a sales perspective and then into marketing and mindset. And the undertone through all of that is setting those goals and then the endless pursuit of achieving on those, and always expanding our horizons. But on the sales side in particular, everything from how do you reach out? When do you reach out? How do we find prospects? Who is a prospect for me, right? So everybody is a buyer, but for what? I need to know who's a buyer for what I'm selling. And if you think you're not a salesperson, think again. You spend 7 days in the program, and that's certainly something that we could arrange, and you will realize, wow, I sell every single day. I sell my wife that she still needs to love me and that we're a partnership. I sell my kid that at this age, she needs to put her arm in her coat and help me instead of fighting me, put her jacket on in the morning. We sell our clients that we have the ability and the capacity to help them. And we sell maybe our bosses if we're working inside of a company, that we add value to the organization. And not only are we worth keeping around, but that we want the bonuses, we want the raises, we want the promotions, right? So we're selling every single day, even if we don't perceive it as, standing on the car lot, holding the sign saying, buy now. We really sell in every capacity. So it walks through every step of that cycle.
So you mentioned purpose earlier, and you also
Yes.
mentioned sometimes when you get to that level, you think you need to get to another level. And this kind of brings up that question, when we start out, how do we go about defining when enough is enough? How do we
Yes.
go about not keep moving the goalpost further and further away, and because we want to enjoy our lives at the same time? How do we keep those two ideas in mind?
Yes. So that comes down to, so I'll bring another framework in because it fits perfectly, the 10x super life. And it looks at the person holistically. And that's one of the things that really drew me originally to the programs in general, is it's not just about the business. Because we all know the business person who's extremely successful and they don't even talk to their kids and they're on maybe their fourth or fifth wife, right? And it's like, that's great. That's not for me. We also know people who have wonderful family lives, but then they struggle to provide because the income producing side just never got that same investment. And again, that's great. I'm so happy that you're happy, but that's not for me. What I want is to be winning in every area of my life. So we focus on the income, of course, with the business or with your job, in spiritual, right? So whatever your spirituality is, having that connection and investing into that, making sure that you have a good foundation there. Health and wellness. So for myself personally, I'm down 35 pounds over the past year. And that's been a massive improvement. I'm winning all across the board just from that. And it really helps relationships. And then even up to and including recreation, right? So enjoying life. What are we doing today so that we can take that trip, so that we can have that incredible experience? And I love to travel. So that's so important to me. I'm always looking for ways to build in a trip. And that then it produces a mix where you could be really easily overwhelmed. How do I win in every area? And what we then do is we focus in on the one that we can control the most. So for you, it may be your health. I know if I could just lose a little weight or get in the gym, I'll have that extra energy I need to now focus into here, or her. Perfect. That's the one you tackle first then. And you set a goal and you set an expectation. Now, on the business side, where we tend to see that is it's either going to be sales, marketing, or mindset that you have flaws in, especially if you're $3 million of revenue or less, which is most people. So it means either your sales, your marketing, or your mindset, or all three, somewhere in those broken. So we want to identify where can we make the improvements, and then how can we measure the results that we're looking to achieve. So it's not enough to say, I want to use 10x. I want to 10x my income. Okay, great. What does that look like? How many clients do you need? Are you selling the same product you're selling today? Does it mean you're in the same industry or the same position or the same role? Are you replacing your job with that side gig? Are we going to no longer call it a side gig? Now it's your gig, right? So it's those sorts of things. And then when we set that, if it comes to a point where you've set that goal and you have no idea how to reach it, it's too big, right? We want big, lofty goals that pull us forward. But if we have no idea how we could possibly attain it, then maybe we're not at 10x, maybe we're at 100x. So we want to drill that back down then. And if you need to, reverse engineer it until you see how you could attain it. Should still be very difficult. But if you see it, that now is in the realm. Once you hit it, now we look for it again. So we are moving the goalpost, but we're moving it in increments where we always have a vision of, I know how I could do this. I need that extra hire. I need to learn this. But it's not, I have no idea. That's the wrong spot.
Gotcha. I mean, you touched on sales and marketing a little bit. How about just focusing on the marketing segment this time? What are a couple little tweaks that you see people could be making that would really move the needle for them?
Absolutely. I would say the number one thing is personal brand, bringing yourself out into things, right? So if you're inside an organization and all the marketing's done for me, it is for the organization, but not for you. Why do your customers come back to you, specifically in your sales role? Or if you're in a service role, right? I had an eye appointment the other day, and of course, they're salespeople, but they're not getting sales training. They're not like, I didn't go to that person because I knew her. That was just who was next, right? But if we can come to the point where we have that personal brand, now, even if she's not available, you know what? I'll wait the 10 extra minutes because I want to work with, and I'll use you as an example, Jack. I want to work with Jack. So I'll wait 10 minutes so I can be seen by Jack. That's the level of service, really, and it comes from providing value. But as we're branding ourselves, talk about what you do for work. Especially if you own the company, talk about the people within the company. One of the things that I personally like to focus on is humanizing success. So it's just bringing those stories out, tell the wins, tell some of the losses. We've got to see both sides.
Are there some avenues of telling your story that you see as particularly attractive or
Oh, certainly.
beneficial? Like, are we talking YouTube? Are we talking just word of mouth? What are you talking?
Yeah. So, word of mouth, we'll start there because that's kind of the age old tried and true. Absolutely. Extremely powerful. It's limited in its reach. That's the limiting factor with word of mouth. If you could get every person on the planet talking about you word of mouth, you'd be unstoppable. But there's limitations to that. We have to build those networks. And the biggest thing is it takes time. How we accelerate that then is tends to be immediately to social media. The ways to leverage it though, from how I see it, stories, reels, leveraging those things, stories, you can be really creative and you can experiment really, really freely. It's gone after 24 hours. So if you post a video of your cat or your dog and it gets no action, then you just don't post about that as much. But if you post something with your kids and all of a sudden everybody's liking it and hearting it, and normally you get like 2 likes per post, guess what? Talk about your kids more. It's not using them for your business. It's getting the awareness. And then from that, once people know you, they will see your business. And of course, all your other posts that, certainly you're doing. The other thing, reels are still hot. The other thing about reels is you can go from reels to TikTok to shorts to Snapchat even. You can throw those in anywhere. And now you're reusing content. So again, we're not just multiplying our income, but our efforts too, because our time, our money, and our energy is really the three main resources we work with. Another one right now I'd highly encourage you to consider is carousels. There are some really cool strategies with carousels that have been coming on to embed videos into the carousel itself. So it makes your scroll stopping first slide really catch somebody on as they're doing their doom scroll. Bam, you've got to hit them with something catchy. And then they slide to that next in the carousel, and it's actually a video. So now you go from hook to you have an opportunity to actually speak to them. It's the most powerful thing at the moment. And I'll tell you, take advantage because certainly, again, it will change. Just like reels have ebbed and flowed, this will ebb and flow, but right now it's hot.
I've actually never heard of a carousel. What actually is
Oh, okay.
that?
So a carousel is if you think of like literally like an old school slide deck where you've got
Uh-huh.
one and then you just arrow over and it shows you the next slide and the next slide and the next slide. So it's very useful, especially if you're telling a story, right? Because in a video, if someone's looking for video content, they'll consume that story. But if they're scrolling, you can only fit so much in that square post on Instagram. What you can do with a carousel is you tell the first part of the story, you lead with a hook, right? We've got to grab their attention. But then from that, now think of turning pages in a book. You're able to tell the next step of the story and lead them through a journey. If you do this properly, it leads to a call to action. That then really will increase your conversions. And whether it's to follow, to DM me, to comment, to share, or to buy something, it doesn't matter so much as that you have a clear intention and that you've got a great hook and the content in the middle adds value to whoever that intended consumer is.
Awesome. Well, as we're winding down, I do want to ask if you're comfortable, would you be willing to share some of your like 10x goals with us to kind of give
Sure,
us a
I
feel
can I
for
can do
what you're
that.
working towards?
Absolutely. So one of my 10x goals, and I alluded to it earlier with the weight loss, is to improve my health so that I have more energy than my 20-month-old. Now I realize that's a high lofty goal, but I have a path, I have a clear way that I think I can achieve it. So that's one of my 10x goals is to have more energy than a toddler, and yeah, I'm working on it. That's a tough one. I work
That
every
is
day at that one. She keeps me on my toes. Another 10x goal that I have is to hire more employees. So I want 5 employees by the end of 2025. So we are working towards that. Obviously, there's some revenue goals that need to support that. And the way we structure it is that before you hire an employee, and this is, I shouldn't even share this, but I'm going to, $250,000 of revenue before you hire the first employee is the gold standard. It's a
Interesting.
goal. It doesn't fit all industries, but if you can hit that, boy, do you know you're on a good track. And then each additional employee should be an additional $300,000 of revenue. So that adds up quick. But how powerful of an organization if you can maintain those ratios? And if you've got questions on how to make that happen, anything like that, again, that's where someone like myself can really help giving that guiding step. But that's one of my main 10x goals, and that allows me then to still maintain the time that I enjoy with my daughter and my family, to hit our financial goals, and to generate an organization that can function whether I'm there or not. Although, of course, I intend to be there as much as possible. But if I need to step out for a soccer game, I can. And the business will continue to flow. So that's a lot of where those metrics come from. But I would say those are the two kind of biggest goals that I'm focused on at the moment. And then, of course, I've got several other. I recommend minimum of 4, no more than 8 at a given time. Really keeps you within a bandwidth where you've got enough to target in the different areas of your life, but you're not aiming for everything all at once.
Awesome. I feel like the whole hiring employees could be a whole nother episode. Maybe
It could
in
be.
the future we can interview again on that specific topic. But
I would love that.
yeah. So Gary, as we're winding down, I like to ask everyone, what is the best and worst personal finance advice you've either heard or received?
Yes. So I'll start with the best. The best financial advice I've personally received is to invest in yourself. And being a coach, I'm sure that sounds like, oh, it's a sales, it's a marketing thing. Yes, I'll be flat out. Yes, of course it helps on that front. But it's true from the sense of every time I've learned something for myself, and usually that takes an investment of at least time and energy, if not money too, I've gained something from it. Whether it's a new connection or a new skill, becoming a CPA, writing loans as a mortgage loan officer, and now I learn every day. I learn from my clients. So every time I take that investment, I gain so many more insights, and it makes me better able to help others, but also support myself along the way. And I think you've got to have that duality. The worst financial advice I've ever received is, and it comes back to so often, I think what we tell our kids is save everything. That is not the answer. It's oversimplified. It works at the age of 5. It needs to end certainly by the age of 10. Kids can understand so much more than I think we sometimes give them credit for. And we have to educate ourselves so that we can educate them on it's not just about saving, it's the intention behind it. We're saving to do something else. And yes, there's a time and a place for a rainy day, and you've got to cover your cash flow. And now we get into business planning, right? But you've got to have something further. It's not enough to just put it into certificates of deposits or a piggy bank, right? That doesn't cut it. So I would say that's been the worst advice that I've received, from the sense of it creates a trap from a place of well intention, which is so dangerous. It's like the wolf in sheep's clothing at that point. You know it's there to help you, but boy, could it screw you if you just follow that at its face.
So you said something, and I just had a recent conversation with David Delisle, who wrote a children's book, and we had a discussion on allowance, and he just made me think of it. So have you and your wife had a discussion of, will you give your kids an allowance?
We have actually. So even at 20 months, we had this conversation. She will not be getting an allowance because I have the privilege of owning my own company. She will work for me, and her earned wages then can create her allowance. I've seen that taken a step further, and it's something that I'm looking to employ and looking to build ways to make this happen, where the child works for the family business or for any business, earns their wages, and then invests those wages. And now the passive income from that investment, that's their allowance.
Awesome.
So obviously there's some work to make that flow to be an allowance that amounts to much, but what a powerful way. Now we're teaching this, the earning, the keeping, the multiplying, and then living off of passive income. Boy, if we can start that as a young age,
Sky's the limit. So Gary, where can the listeners reach out to you or go learn more about you?
Yes, absolutely. So at Micu Growth, MICU, and then the word growth. That's my handle on all social accounts. Feel free to reach out, DM me, let me know how you found me, and I'd be happy to, one, have a conversation with you. Two, if you're interested in Cardone University, have you for 7 days of access, completely complimentary, so that you can see how it can fit in and solve those problems that you have. And then, of course, like and share this episode. That's the best way to spread the news. I highly encourage you doing that. It's been a pleasure talking to you today, Jack.
Absolute pleasure, Gary. Until next time.
Until next time.